The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what waited for them out there. In the year 2347, they finally found out. And the answer was not what they had hoped for. Commander David Park stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel USS Horizon. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and calm eyes that had seen many battles. But today was supposed to be different. Today was supposed to be peaceful. Earth had been invited to join the Galactic Collective, a federation of 47 alien species that had maintained peace for over 12,000 years. David should have felt proud. Instead, he felt uneasy. Beside him stood Dr. Grace Kim, Earth's best expert in alien languages. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. She had spent 20 years studying every alien transmission humanity had ever received. Now she would finally meet the beings behind those messages. Lieutenant James Lee worked at the tactical station nearby. He was young but brilliant, always thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. His fingers moved across the controls as he monitored the space around them. "Commander," James said, his voice tight. "I'm picking up multiple contacts ahead. They're not on our expected route." David walked to the view screen. In the distance, he could see ships emerging from the darkness of space. They were not the elegant vessels of the collective that had been sent to escort them. These ships were dark and angular, covered in weapons. "Grace," David said quietly, "what species uses ships like that?" Grace's face went pale as she checked her database. "Vorthani. They're members of the collective, but they voted against humanity joining. They believe we are inferior." Before David could respond, the first shot was fired. The Vorthani fleet attacked without warning, without mercy. Green beams of energy tore through space, slamming into the human escort ships. The USS Columbia exploded in a ball of fire, killing everyone aboard instantly. The USS Endeavour tried to flee, but 3 Vorthani cruisers surrounded it and fired together. The ship broke apart like a toy. David watched in horror as 47 of his people died in seconds. "Return fire!" he shouted. But the Horizon was a diplomatic vessel. It had minimal weapons, designed only for self-defense. Their shots barely scratched the Vorthani shields. "Commander, we need to retreat," James yelled over the sound of explosions. David's hands gripped the railing until his knuckles turned white. Every part of him wanted to fight, to make the Vorthani pay for what they had done. But he had a responsibility to the survivors. "All ships, fall back to human space," he ordered, his voice heavy with grief and rage. "Maximum speed." The Horizon fled, leaving behind the burning remains of their fallen comrades. 3 days later, David stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Collective Council. It was a massive room, shaped like a dome, with seats rising in circles toward the ceiling. Hundreds of alien ambassadors sat in those seats, representing species that humanity had only dreamed of meeting. The Vorthani ambassador stood at the center of the chamber. He was a tall creature, almost 8 feet, with gray skin and 4 arms. His eyes were completely black, showing no emotion as he spoke. "The action taken against the human vessels was necessary," the ambassador said, his voice cold. "Humanity is a disease. They spread across their planet like insects, destroying everything they touch. They should never have been granted membership in this collective. We simply performed the cleansing measure." David felt Grace's hand on his arm, trying to calm him. But his blood was boiling. The council chairman, an ancient being from a species called the Valorians, raised his hand for silence. The Vorthani action was unfortunate. However, we must consider the stability of the collective. The Vorthani Dominion is a powerful member. We cannot risk war over this incident. Incident? David stepped forward, ignoring the shocked gasps from the gallery. You call the murder of 47 innocent people an incident? The chairman looked uncomfortable. Commander Park, please understand. The collective has maintained peace for 12,000 years. We cannot jeopardize that peace for a single event. What justice do you offer? Grace asked, her voice steady despite her anger. The chairman exchanged glances with other council members. We will issue a formal condemnation of the Varthani action. Economic sanctions will be applied for a period of 6 months. This is the maximum punishment we can. Sanctions? David's voice echoed through the chamber. They murdered our people in cold blood, and you offer sanctions? The Varthani ambassador laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of contempt. Listen to the primitive creature bark. Your species has been among the stars for barely 200 years. You have no power here. You have no voice. Accept the council's decision and be grateful we don't finish what we started. Silence fell over the chamber. Every eye turned to David, waiting to see how the human would respond to such an insult. David took a deep breath. He thought about the crew members who had died. He thought about their families back on Earth, waiting for news that would break their hearts. He thought about all the years humanity had spent dreaming of the stars, hoping to find friendship and wonder among alien species. Instead, they had found cruelty and injustice. David looked at the Varthani ambassador. Then he looked at the council chairman. Then he let his gaze sweep across every alien in that chamber, making sure they could all see his eyes. You have made a grave miscalculation, David said. His voice was calm, but something in it made several ambassadors lean back in their seats. You look at humanity and see a young species, a weak species, a species that can be bullied and pushed aside. He paused, and when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of all human history behind them. But humanity did not survive ice ages, plagues, world wars, and near extinction by being weak. We did not reach the stars by giving up when faced with impossible odds. You want to know what humanity is? We are the species that fights. We are the species that survives. And we are the species that never ever forgets. David turned and walked toward the exit. Grace and James followed close behind. Commander Park, the chairman called out. What are you going to do? David stopped at the door. He did not turn around. We are going home, he said. And then you will learn exactly what kind of mistake you have made today. The doors closed behind them, and humanity's delegation left the collective council for the last time. In the days that followed, every human ship in the galaxy changed course. They all headed in the same direction, toward a small blue planet on the edge of the Milky Way. Communication channels closed. Trade agreements were canceled. Human ambassadors packed their bags and said goodbye to their alien counterparts. Earth went silent. And across the galaxy, species who had dismissed humanity as primitive began to feel something they had not felt in a very long time. They began to feel afraid. The news of the massacre reached Earth within hours. It spread across every news channel, every social media platform, every screen on the planet. People watched in horror as the recordings played again and again. They saw the Varthani ships attack without warning. They saw the USS Columbia explode. They saw 47 names scroll across their screens, each one representing a mother, a father, a child, a friend who would never come home. And then they saw the Galactic Council's response. Sanctions. A formal condemnation. Nothing more. For the first time in centuries, humanity spoke with one voice. That voice said, "This will not stand." Admiral Susan Cho stood before the United Nations Space Command in Geneva. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that could freeze a man at 20 paces. She had commanded fleets, won battles, and buried too many soldiers to count. She was not a woman who gave speeches. She was a woman who gave orders. "The galaxy thinks we are weak," she said to the assembled leaders. "They think we will accept this injustice because we are new to the stars. They are wrong." The room was silent. Every president, every prime minister, every general listened with complete attention. "Effective immediately, all human vessels will return to the Sol system. We will cut all communication with the Galactic Collective. We will end all trade agreements, all diplomatic relations, all contact with alien species." One of the delegates raised his hand. "Admiral, won't that hurt our economy?" "We depend on trade with. Our economy will survive," Admiral Cho interrupted. "Our pride will not survive another humiliation. Earth must send a message to the galaxy. That message is simple. We are not your victims. We are not your servants. And we are not afraid of you." The delegates voted. The result was unanimous. Earth went dark. Meanwhile, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that did not exist on any map, Director Michael Yoon watched screens filled with data. He was a quiet man with glasses and gentle hands that had designed the most terrifying weapons in human history. Project Prometheus had been his life's work for 30 years. When humanity first discovered that aliens existed, the world's governments made two decisions. The first was to make contact and seek peaceful relations. The second was to prepare for the possibility that peace might fail. Michael had been given unlimited resources and complete secrecy. His mission was simple: make sure that if any alien species ever attacked Earth, they would regret it for the rest of their very short existence. Now, standing in the control room of Project Prometheus, Michael felt a cold satisfaction. The Vorthani had no idea what was coming. Dr. Grace Kim arrived at the facility 3 weeks after the massacre. She had spent those weeks analyzing every piece of Vorthani data the Horizon had collected before the attack. What she had found kept her awake at night. "Director Yoon," she said, placing a datapad on his desk. "The attack on the Horizon wasn't random. It was a test." Michael looked up from his work. "A test?" "The Vorthani wanted to see how we would react. They wanted to see if the collective would protect us." Grace's voice was steady, but Michael could see fear in her eyes. "The collective did nothing, which means the Vorthani now know that no one will stop them." She pressed a button on the datapad. A holographic map appeared, showing troop movements, fleet positions, and invasion routes. "They're planning a full-scale invasion of Earth," Grace said. 6 months from now, they're going to try to wipe us out completely." Michael stared at the map for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Then I suppose it's time to show them what we've been building down here." He led Grace through the facility, past laboratories filled with scientists and engineers, past testing ranges where prototype weapons turned targets into dust, past rooms filled with secrets that would have terrified the Galactic Collective. Finally, they reached a massive hangar. Grace stopped and stared, unable to believe what she was seeing. Ships, hundreds of them, but not like any ships she had ever seen before. These vessels were sleek and black, covered in strange patterns that seemed to shift and move. They looked less like machines and more like living shadows given form. "We call them the Judgment Class," Michael said quietly. "Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Their hulls are made of a material we developed ourselves. It bends light and energy around itself. In simple terms, Doctor, these ships are almost impossible to hit." "How?" Grace whispered. "How did we build all this without anyone knowing?" "Because everyone underestimated us," Michael replied. "The collective, the Vorthani, even our own people. They all thought humanity was too young, too primitive to pose a real threat." He looked at the ships with pride in his eyes. They were very, very wrong. That night, Grace sent a message to Admiral Cho, It was encrypted with the highest level of security Earth possessed. "The invasion is coming," she reported. "But I've seen what we have. Admiral, I think we're going to be okay." Admiral Cho read the message in her office. Outside her window, she could see the night sky, filled with stars that had once seemed so beautiful and full of promise. Now they seemed like enemy territory, hiding threats that wanted to destroy everything she loved. She thought about her daughter, who had just turned 12. She thought about her grandson, still a baby. She thought about all the children on Earth who deserved to grow up without fear. Then she picked up her communicator and sent a single order to every military installation on the planet and in orbit. "Wake the giants." Across Earth, sealed doors opened for the first time in decades. Secret bases activated. Underground factories began to hum with activity. Ships that had been hidden in asteroids, on the dark side of the moon, in the depths of the ocean, all started their engines. For 200 years, humanity had dreamed of peaceful exploration among the stars. They had hoped to find friends. They had hoped to find wonder. Instead, they had found enemies. Now, in the silence of space, those enemies waited. The Vorthani sharpened their weapons and counted down the days until they could wipe humanity from existence. The Galactic Collective watched from a distance, curious to see what would happen to the primitive species gonna dare to walk away from there. None of them knew what was coming. None of them understood that Earth's silence was not the silence of fear or defeat. It was the silence before a storm. The silence of a predator preparing to strike Dot in the darkness between stars. Humanity prepared its response, and when that response came, the entire galaxy would tremble. Admiral Susan Cho stood at her window, watching the stars. "You wanted a war," she whispered to the darkness. "You should have been more careful what you wished for." Somewhere in the distance, thunder began to gather. 3 months passed. To the rest of the galaxy, Earth remained silent and invisible behind a wall of closed borders and ended communications. The Galactic Collective sent hundreds of messages asking for dialogue, for negotiation, for any kind of response. They received nothing. The Vorthani Dominion saw this silence as proof of their victory. The primitive humans had retreated to their little planet, too scared to face the superior species. The Vorthani Supreme Commander, a warlord named who had conquered 11 species in his long career, laughed at reports of Earth's isolation. "They hide like frightened animals," he told his generals. "When we come for them, they will beg for mercy. We will give them none." The Vorthani war fleet assembled at the edge of human-controlled space. 800 warships, each one bristling with weapons. It was the largest military force the Dominion had ever gathered. Enough firepower to reduce Earth to rubble 1,000 times over. The Supreme Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel called the Conqueror's Fist. Around him, his officers monitored the fleet's positions and prepared for the invasion. "Send a message to Earth," the Supreme Commander ordered. "Tell them they have 1 hour to surrender unconditionally. If they refuse, we will destroy every human settlement in the solar system before we turn their homeworld into ash." The message was sent. The Vorthani waited, confident in their power. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Then 3. No response came from Earth. The Supreme Commander's patience ran out. "Begin the invasion," he commanded. "Show these insects what happens when they defy the Vorthani Dominion." The fleet began to move. 800 ships, advancing toward humanity's home like a wave of destruction. And then something appeared in their path. A single ship emerged from hyperspace directly in front of the Vorthani Armada. It was small, barely larger than a patrol craft. Its hull was black, covered in those strange shifting patterns that seemed to absorb light itself. Compared to the massive warships surrounding it, the vessel looked like a toy. Captain Daniel Shin sat in the command chair of the USS Judgment. He was 35 years old, a quiet man who rarely smiled. He had volunteered for this mission, knowing he might not survive it. But he had also seen the recordings of the massacre. He had watched his fellow humans die while the galaxy did nothing. Today, he would make sure no one ever forgot what happened next. "Captain," his communications officer said, "the Vorthani are demanding we identify ourselves and surrender." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Open a channel. Let them see my face." The screen flickered, and suddenly Daniel was looking at the Supreme Commander himself. The alien's black eyes showed surprise at seeing a human so calm in the face of such overwhelming force. "You are either very brave or very stupid, human," the Supreme Commander said. "One small ship against 800. Do you wish to die?" Daniel smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "I am Captain Daniel Shin of the United Nations Space Command. I am here to deliver a message from Earth." The Supreme Commander laughed. "A message? What message could you possibly deliver that would matter?" "This one," Daniel said. "You killed 47 of our people. You called us inferior. You planned to wipe out our species." He paused, letting the words sink in. "That was a mistake." Before the Supreme Commander could respond, Daniel gave the order. "Fire." The USS Judgment fired a single shot. What happened next would be studied, debated, and feared for generations to come. A beam of pure darkness erupted from the Judgment's main weapon. It was not light, not energy, not anything the galaxy had ever seen before. It was something that seemed to unmake reality itself. The beam struck the Conqueror's fist. The flagship did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to exist. Every atom, every molecule, every particle of the massive warship was erased from existence in less than a heartbeat. But the beam did not stop there. It spread outward in all directions, passing through every Vorthani ship within 1,000 kilometers of the flagship. Each vessel it touched disappeared in the same way, erased from reality as if they had never existed at all. The entire attack lasted 0.003 seconds. When it was over, 412 Vorthani warships were gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone. The remaining Vorthani ships drifted in shock. Their sensors could not understand what had happened. Their crews stared at empty space where moments ago their comrades had been. Their minds struggled to process what they had witnessed. Captain Daniel Shin opened a channel to every frequency in the galaxy. His face appeared on screens across thousands of worlds. In the halls of the Galactic Collective, in the palaces of the Vorthani Dominion, and in the homes of billions of beings who had never seen a human before. "To the Vorthani Dominion," he said, his voice calm and cold. "Your Supreme Commander is dead. Your flagship is gone. Half your fleet has been erased from existence. This is what happens when you attack humanity." He paused, letting the silence stretch across the stars. "To the Galactic Collective, who abandoned us when we needed justice. To every species that looked at humanity and saw only primitive weaklings. Look at what we are capable of. Look at what we have been building while you dismissed us as inferior." Daniel leaned forward, and his eyes seemed to pierce through the screen into the soul of every being watching. This was not a war. This was a demonstration. "We wanted you to see exactly what will happen to anyone who threatens Earth again." His voice dropped lower. "This weapon, this ship, is just the beginning. We have more. Many, many more." Across the galaxy, ambassadors and generals and leaders of every species felt a chill run through their bodies. "The Vorthani killed 47 humans," Daniel continued. "Today, we killed over 400,000 Vorthani. We consider this matter settled. But let this be a warning to all who would harm our people. The next time will not be a demonstration. The next time will be an extinction. He reached for the controls. Remember this day. Remember what you saw. And remember that humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And humanity does not lose. The transmission ended. In the chaos that followed, the remaining Vorthani ships fled in every direction. Some surrendered to the judgment, begging for mercy. Others tried to run back to their home space. A few, driven mad by what they had witnessed, fired on each other in their panic. The USS Judgment did not fire again. Its mission was complete. Captain Daniel Shin sat back in his chair and closed his eyes. He thought about the 47 crew members who had died on the horizon. He hoped, wherever they were, that they had seen what happened today. "This was for you," he whispered. "Rest now. You have been avenged." Behind him, his crew worked in silence. There were no celebrations, no cheers of victory. They all understood that what had happened today was not something to celebrate. It was a terrible, necessary thing. Humanity had shown the galaxy its true face. And that face was not weak. That face was not primitive. That face was ancient and fierce, forged in millions of years of survival against impossible odds. The galaxy had poked a sleeping giant, and now the giant was awake. In the days following the demonstration, the recording of the USS Judgment's attack spread to every corner of known space. Beings who had never heard of Earth watched in horror as 400 Vorthani warships vanished in less than a second. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive insects suddenly found themselves unable to sleep at night. The Galactic Collective Council held emergency meeting after emergency meeting. Ambassadors screamed at each other, pointing fingers, demanding answers. How had the humans developed such technology? Why had no one seen this coming? What were they supposed to do now? The Vorthani Dominion collapsed into civil war within a week. Half their military had been erased in a single moment. Their supreme commander, their fleet, their pride, all gone. Different factions blamed each other for the disaster. Worlds that had been conquered by the Vorthani centuries ago saw their chance and rose up in rebellion. And through it all, Earth remained silent. Ambassador Jennifer Beek was 45 years old. She had spent her career as a diplomat, negotiating trade deals and resolving conflicts. She had never expected to become the face of humanity's revenge. But when Admiral Cho asked her to deliver Earth's demands to the Collective, she did not hesitate. Jennifer arrived at the Collective's capital station aboard a single shuttle. No escorts, no warships, no displays of force. She did not need them. The entire galaxy had seen what a single human ship could do. The message was clear. Earth did not need to threaten. Earth simply acted. The council chamber was silent when Jennifer walked in. Every ambassador watched her with wide eyes. Some showed fear. Others showed hatred. A few showed something that might have been respect. Jennifer walked to the center of the chamber and stood, exactly where Commander David Park had stood months ago, when he had warned the council that they were making a mistake. "Members of the Galactic Collective," she began, her voice calm and clear. "I bring a message from Earth." The council chairman, the same Valorian who had offered sanctions in response to the massacre, leaned forward in his seat. His ancient face showed exhaustion and worry. "Ambassador Beek, the Collective wishes to express its deepest regrets for the tragedy that occurred. We understand now that our response was insufficient. We are prepared to discuss new terms." Jennifer smiled. It was a polite smile, but there was no warmth in it. "We are not here to discuss terms, Chairman. We are here to deliver demands." The chamber erupted in angry voices. How dare the humans make demands? Who did they think they were? Had they forgotten that the Collective had existed for 12,000 years? Jennifer waited until the noise died down. Then she continued as if nothing had happened. Demand 1. All Vorthani, military commanders involved in the attack on the USS Horizon, will be surrendered to human custody within 30 days. They will stand trial for the murder of 47 human citizens. If found guilty, they will be executed. That is unacceptable. A Vorthani representative shouted. The Dominion does not surrender its own. The Dominion no longer exists in any meaningful way, Jennifer interrupted. What remains of your government will comply, or we will come and take the criminals ourselves. I assure you, you do not want that. The Vorthani representative fell silent. Demand 2. Jennifer continued. Humanity will be granted full voting rights in the Galactic Collective, effective immediately. Our voice will be equal to any other species. We will have a seat on the Security Council. The chairman raised his hand. Ambassador, full membership rights take decades to earn. There are procedures. EVILUATIONs. Your procedures allowed 47 of our people to be murdered while you did nothing. Your procedures are meaningless to us. Jennifer's voice hardened. This is not a request. She paused, letting her words sink in. Demand 3. Jennifer touched a control on her wrist, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, beautiful and blue, spinning slowly in the void. Then the image expanded, showing the space around Earth. The ambassadors gasped. Ships, thousands of ships, spread across the solar system like a vast web of steel and fire. Each one was marked with Earth's symbol. Each one carried weapons that could tear apart planets. This is our fleet, Jennifer said. 12,000 vessels. Many carry weapons similar to the one used against the Vorthani. Some carry weapons even more powerful. She let the image rotate, making sure every ambassador could see the full scale of humanity's military might. Demand 3 is simple. Any future act of aggression against Earth, its citizens or its allies, will be met with total annihilation. Not of ships, not of armies, of worlds. You cannot be serious, the chairman whispered. You would destroy entire planets? We would rather not, Jennifer replied. We came to the stars hoping to find peace. We wanted to explore, to learn, to make friends among the species of this galaxy. Her voice grew colder. But you showed us that peace must be earned. You showed us that the strong survive and the weak are destroyed. You showed us that mercy is seen as weakness. She took a step forward, her eyes sweeping across the chamber. So we adapted. We learned. We prepared. And now we stand before you, no longer as hopeful newcomers, but as a species that will never be victimized again. The hologram shifted, showing a new image. It was a recording of the Judgment's attack, playing in slow motion. 400 ships vanishing into nothing, erased from existence in the blink of an eye. Look at what we did with one ship, Jennifer said. Imagine what we could do with 12,000. Imagine what we could do to your homeworlds, your colonies, your stations. She paused. Now imagine never having to find out, because you chose to accept our demands and live in peace. The chamber was absolutely silent. Jennifer touched her wrist again, and a document appeared on every ambassador's screen. It was a formal treaty, written in every major language of the collective. At the bottom was a line for signatures. You have 1 hour to sign, she said. After that, we will assume you have chosen conflict. And I promise you, on behalf of all 7 billion humans on Earth, that if you choose conflict, you will not survive it. She turned and walked toward the exit, just as Commander Park had done months ago. Ambassador Beak, the chairman called out. What kind of species threatens genocide? Jennifer stopped at the door. She looked back over her shoulder, and for a moment, the ambassador's mask dropped. Underneath was something ancient and fierce. Something that had been forged in ice ages and wars and all the suffering of human history. The kind that survived on a world that tried to kill us for 2 million years, she said. The kind that clawed our way to the stars despite every obstacle. The kind that learned the hard way that survival is not given. It is taken. She smiled, and this time there was something almost sad in her expression. We did not want this, Chairman. We wanted to be friends with the galaxy. But you taught us that friends are a luxury we cannot afford. So instead, we will be something else. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. We will be the thing that monsters fear. We will be the consequence that makes tyrants hesitate. We will be the hand that punishes cruelty and protects the innocent. She opened the door. Sign the treaty. Accept our demands. And maybe, someday, when enough time has passed and enough trust has been built, we can try being friends again. The door closed behind her. 57 minutes later. Every member of the Galactic Collective had signed the treaty. Humanity had come to the stars as hopeful explorers. They had been reborn as something far more dangerous, and the galaxy would never be the same. 1 year had passed since the demonstration. 1 year since the USS Judgment erased 400 Vorthani ships from existence. 1 year since Ambassador Jennifer Beak forced the Galactic Collective to its knees. The galaxy had changed. The Vorthani Dominion was gone, broken into a dozen small states that fought among themselves for scraps of their former empire. The military commanders responsible for the massacre had been captured, tried, and executed. Their names were already being forgotten. Humanity was no longer called primitive or inferior. Now, when aliens spoke of Earth, they spoke in whispers. They told stories of the humans who had waited in silence while building weapons of unimaginable power. They warned their children about the species that did not forgive, did not forget, and did not lose. Admiral David Park stood on the bridge of the USS Prometheus, the newest and most powerful ship in Earth's fleet. He was older now, with gray appearing in his hair and new lines on his face. But his eyes were the same, calm, watchful, ready. Beside him stood his oldest friends. Captain Grace Kim commanded her own vessel now, a sleek cruiser called the Starlight. She had traded her translator's notes for a captain's chair, and she had never looked back. Rear Admiral James Lee oversaw tactical operations for the entire fleet. His mind was still 3 steps ahead of everyone else. They had come so far from that terrible day on the horizon, so far from the massacre that had started everything. Admiral, a communications officer called out. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Collective Council. David nodded. Put it through. The council chairman's face appeared on the screen. The ancient Valorian looked even more tired than he had a year ago. His eyes showed something David had never expected to see from the leader of the galaxy's oldest government. Fear. Admiral Park, the chairman said. We have a situation. I'm listening. The chairman's image was replaced by a star map. David felt his stomach tighten as he saw what was displayed. The Drakari hegemony, the chairman explained. A species from the outer rim of the galaxy. They have conquered over 200 worlds in the past 5,000 years. They have never been defeated in battle. The map showed a massive fleet moving through space. Red dots representing ships, thousands and thousands of them, advancing toward collective territory. 10,000 warships, the chairman continued. They've sent us an ultimatum. We have 30 days to surrender. If we refuse, they will begin their conquest with the nearest collective worlds. James stepped forward, studying the display. Their technology? Superior to most collective species. Their shields can withstand our heaviest weapons. Their offensive capabilities are significant. The chairman paused. Admiral Park, the Collective Security Council has voted. We are officially requesting humanity's protection. Silence fell over the bridge. 1 year ago, the collective had abandoned humanity. They had offered sanctions and condemnations while 47 people lay dead. They had called humans primitive, inferior, unworthy of justice. Now they came begging for help. David thought about telling them no. He thought about letting the Drakari sweep through collective space, teaching all those species what it felt like to be helpless against a superior enemy. A part of him, a dark and angry part, wanted to watch them suffer, but then he thought about the innocent beings on those worlds. The children who had done nothing wrong. The families who just wanted to live in peace. They were not responsible for the collective's failures. They did not deserve to die for the sins of their leaders. David had learned something in the past year. Being powerful did not mean being cruel. True strength was not just the ability to destroy. It was the ability to protect. Chairman, David said slowly, 1 year ago, you abandoned us. You watched our people die and did nothing. The chairman bowed his head. I know, and I'm sorry. The collective failed humanity. We failed ourselves. If you choose to let us face the Drakari alone, we will understand. We have earned your hatred. David shook his head. I don't hate you, Chairman. Hate is exhausting, and we have more important things to do. He paused, making a decision. Tell your people that Earth will protect the collective. The Drakari will not take a single world. The chairman's eyes widened with surprise and hope. Admiral, thank you. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when this is over. The transmission ended. David turned to his crew. Send the word to all fleet commanders. Full mobilization. I want every ship we have ready to move within 48 hours. James looked at the star map, calculating. The Drakari have 10,000 ships. We have 12,000. It'll be close. David smiled. It was a thin, dangerous smile. Who said anything about 12,000? He touched a control on his chair. A new display appeared, showing ship movements across the solar system and beyond. Ships emerging from hidden bases. Ships that had been built in secret over the past year. Ships that no one outside Earth knew existed. Grace stared at the display. David. How many? 50,000, David replied. We've been busy. The fleet assembled at the border of collective space 3 weeks later. 50,000 human warships, arranged in perfect formation, their weapons powered and ready. Behind them, the worlds of the collective waited in fear and hope. In front of them. The Drakari hegemony approached. The Drakari commander was a massive creature. 9 feet tall with armored skin and 4 glowing eyes. He had conquered more worlds than he could remember. He had never known defeat. When he saw the human fleet waiting for him, he laughed. 50,000 ships? Impressive for a young species. His voice boomed across the communication channel. But numbers mean nothing against the hegemony. We have broken larger fleets than this. Admiral David Park's face appeared on the Drakari screens. Behind him, his crew worked calmly, showing no fear. I am Admiral David Park of the United Nations Space Command. I am giving you one chance to turn your fleet around and return to the Outer Rim. Take this chance. It is the only one you will receive. The Drakari commander laughed again. You dare threaten the hegemony? We have conquered 200 worlds. What has humanity ever done? David's expression did not change. We destroyed half the Varthani war fleet in less than a second. We forced the Galactic Collective to accept our demands at gunpoint. And we built all of this in 1 year. He gestured at the fleet behind him. Imagine what we'll build in 10 years. In 100. The Drakari commander's laughter faded. Something flickered in his 4 eyes. Was it doubt? To the Drakari hegemony, David continued, and to every species that would threaten the peace of this galaxy. Earth has issued its final warning. We do not seek conquest. We do not desire empire, but we will protect the innocent, and we will destroy anyone who threatens what we hold dear." He leaned forward, and his voice dropped to something cold and absolute. "Another attack means absolute obliteration. Not of your ships, not of your armies, of your worlds, your civilization, your species. There will be no second chances. There will be no negotiation. There will only be the silence where your empire used to be." The two fleets faced each other across the void. Thousands of ships, millions of beings, all waiting to see what would happen next. The Drakari commander stared at the human admiral. He thought about the recordings he had seen of the Vorthani fleet being erased. He thought about the weapons that could unmake matter itself. He thought about his homeworld, his people, everything he had ever known. "Choose wisely," David said, "because I promise you, on my life, on the lives of every human being who has ever lived, if you come one step closer, you will not live to regret it." Minutes passed. Each one felt like a year. Then, slowly, the Drakari fleet began to turn. Ship by ship, they changed course. They moved away from collective space. They retreated toward the outer rim, leaving their conquest behind. The Drakari commander's face appeared one last time on the screen. His eyes showed something David had seen many times before, in enemies who had finally understood what they were facing. "This is not over, human," the commander said. "One day we will return." David nodded. "We'll be here. We'll always be here." The transmission ended. The Drakari fleet vanished into the darkness between stars. In the void of space, 50,000 human ships stood watch. Behind them, the collective breathed a sigh of relief. Across the galaxy, species who had once mocked humanity now spoke their name with respect and caution. Admiral David Park looked out at the stars. He thought about everyone who had brought them to this moment. The 47 who died on the horizon. Admiral Cho, who had awakened the giants. Director Yoon, who had built the weapons. Captain Shin, who had delivered the first message. Ambassador Beak, who had made the galaxy listen. And all the billions of humans on Earth, who had turned their fear and anger into strength and determination. "We did it," Grace said quietly, standing beside him. "We actually did it." David nodded. "For now. There will always be more threats, more enemies, more tests." He paused. "But that's okay. We'll face them, together." James joined them at the view screen. The three old friends stood together, looking out at the galaxy they had changed forever. "What do you think comes next?" James asked. David considered the question. He thought about everything humanity had been through. The wars, the suffering, the near extinctions. And yet, through it all, they had survived. They had grown. They had become something